Notes here.
Well, hello, hello, hello. I'm Sharon Benjamin, host of Leafless, Not Lifeless, and I'm so excited that you have joined me for this episode, and I'm sure you'll be excited when I tell you about my guest, Lilisa Williams, who is the embodiment of so many different things. And she'll get a chance to talk to us about her life and where she has been. You know, this is Leafless, Not Lifeless. And if you can see the trees behind me, they're both the same cluster, but I got the idea because I was in the backyard, maybe late spring, late winter, early spring, and I thought leafless does not mean lifeless. And there are times when we see people who
Mm.
may be stagnant from our appearance, but they're actually growing and developing. So, I said, leafless does not mean lifeless. And I was going to share some of my scenarios, but the Lord just brought to my mind, share other people's stories. And that's what I'm going to do. So, welcome, Lilisa.
Wow. Thank you so much for having me, Sharon. I'm so glad to be here. I'm
Yes,
looking forward to this
yes,
amazing show. This topic is so intriguing. Leafless,
yes.
not lifeless.
And Lilisa and I met in 2017. And we've both, both I won't use the word retired because a friend of ours, Lilisa, said it's not retiring, it's refiring. So
What? Oh
yes,
boy. Okay. He's giving
yes,
me a whole new outlook on life.
yes.
Wow.
So
Mm.
Lilisa started out, and some people might have looked at her as being leafless, but Lilisa has done so many things, and she's going to tell us about some of them. But she has received a couple of degrees, and she is about to finish up her doctorate. But she traveled a few paths up to that
Mm.
point. So, Lilisa, again, welcome. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
taking the time. I know you're a busy lady, but thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. So, tell us, how was your start in life?
Yeah, good question, but one that I often have to answer, especially having, been a college student. There's always those papers where you have to kind of talk about yourself or
Yes.
introduce yourself or tell us a little bit about yourself, even down to interviews a lot of times. But when I think about how it all started with me, the word that comes to mind is struggle. Struggle, struggle, struggle. It seems like from day one, I just remember my mother telling me just even the struggle that it was in having me in my birth. Like I came early. I was this child that was in what they call back then like an incubator or like I think they call them preemies or something. I don't know if they use that term anymore, but they were like, because I think I came like a month early, so I was really small. I guess around I was the third child, so a few of them had been maybe around the six something pounds, and then here I come with my five something. And so for my mother, that was challenging for her. So because she had to do some extra things, she had to leave me in the hospital, I think a little bit longer. She had to stay there a little longer. So hearing those stories as a kid, I think hearing the story about my first days on this earth being a challenge to someone, I guess it kind of stuck with me in ways that I never even realized. And quite frankly, Sharon, I'm just articulating it like just now. So I really, really, really appreciate your show more than you'll ever know because it possibly refired me in a whole new way.
Yeah.
Fire me up in a whole new way that I absolutely never thought about. So I had to get to this point. But so after that, it was other struggles. So then it was when it was time to go to school. So I had struggles there. Then when I got to school, I struggled with my grades. I struggled with friendships. I was small already, so I got teased about being small. The brother right before me was 6'4". He ended up being 6'4". So he was kind of this just astute type of person anyway, tall. And then the sister before him, who was 2 years older than I, she was this just almost like a delight,
Uh-huh.
right? She did everything right in school. She read at a young age. She was in plays in like the third grade. And I mean had the star spot. So but here I was not being invited to plays, not being even looked at. And so it was, so the early days was let me handle my struggle.
And how
And
did
that's a
you do
lot
that?
of, I think that's a lot of stress on children, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
So your schooling, up to what point did this continue? Did this continue throughout high school, or
Yeah.
how did that impact you? You know, we hear a lot about bullying now, but that was not a phrase, I don't think, or a term that was used when we were in school. So how did that impact you?
Yes, so we had yeah, well, we actually had bullies in Cincinnati where I grew up and went to school. We had bullies and we lived in this project, so the projects and that particular projects, we moved there when I was already 5, and so there were some known leaders, so to speak, or bullies. Anyway, so I was again being smaller, um, kind of not fitting in with the older brother, the older sister, and just out there to make it on my own. So it followed me, that feeling that I didn't measure up. I don't add up. I'm too small. I'm too dark. I'm too um I don't know how to read that well, or I'm not as smart as, my sister who was just 2 years older, and I'm not as savvy as her. Not that I was using those words, but that's how I saw her. She just seemed so smooth. It just seemed like everything fell her way. And I didn't like have any real resentment toward her. And it's oddly, I didn't really have any resentment toward anybody really. I mostly internalized all my resentment. And so I made everything like my fault. And so that's where I think how that impacted my life at such an early age, knowing I had been this struggle, thinking I was a problem and a burden. I mean, who worse to burden but your own mother?
Yes, yes, exactly. So,
And s
so how did you work your way through that? Do you remember any strategies or anyone else outside of yourself who may have helped you? I was talking earlier about one of my teachers who was so instrumental in my life. Do you remember anybody who, besides yourself and thinking about what you were going through, anybody come alongside you to help
yes,
you that
yes,
did?
yes, yes, and yes, yes. So when I was almost 2 years old, I had a sister she was born. Some people know that that person is the person I refer to as my twin. I feel like, God brought her into my life just for me, not for my mother and family, because right away I took to her. So I became inseparable to her. So wherever she did, I did. So basically, I gained back 2 years of my life, so to speak, through her. In that she was a child, for some reason, it was something special about her, and everybody could see it, right? Um, so I latched on to that. And then I almost became like special too because of her. And that was so my mother dressed us alike. We went everywhere together. So that was my anchor. She was my hope in life, so to speak. Um, she was also my way, in my mind, to have that great relationship with my mother because she looked just like my mother, and everybody reminded us of that all the time. So it was a beautiful thing because we were so, so, so close, and we still are to today. And you can convince no one that we are not twins.
Oh, that's amazing. So when you finished your schooling,
Mhm.
your high school, tell us about that.
Yes, yes, I finally finished, but the struggle continues. So from, elementary school, struggling to really figure out who I was basically. But I had settled into being this person that would be overlooked. So I was doing these great things as a little girl, like third grade, maybe fourth grade. I started a club. I called it the DV Leads, and we would meet. So it was about six girls from the elementary school where I attended, Garfield Elementary. Six of us. I know I had to be fourth grade because that school started fourth grade. So we had we these girls, and what we did was we talked to our parents about it, and we decided to meet at each one's house. And I think we met, I believe we met once, I want to say once a month, or maybe it was once every couple of weeks or so. And so I was doing these great things, but still not able to really take it, like to another level. But I would get involved with, fun things like that. And so as the struggle continued with my grades and schooling, and so I think the other thing that kind of impacted me, but my way of getting around things was just to roll with it. So, and I think I learned that also from my mother, and I watched her as she rolled with many problems that came her way as a Black woman growing up in the inner city with seven children. She had the first one at 18, and she was done within the span of say 15 years. So by 35, she already had all these children. And then she had she had a job. So I was watching her. She worked at the IRS. So I got a good glimpse of a good professional working woman. And my mother was a reader. That's all she ever did was read books. I thought, and that's another thing that helped me think that something was wrong with me because I couldn't make me pick up a book.
Mm,
And, but she did make me. So I learned how to read even though I didn't want to because that was her thing. But so I was able to get through school because of what my mother was doing at home,
that's
making me,
amazing. Yeah,
yeah, she made me read. And so sometimes I would fail toward the end of the semester and end of the school year rather. I remember going to summer school every year up until maybe like the seventh grade. They kind of stopped really doing summer school like that. But certainly when in Cincinnati, back in those days in the public school system, summer school was free. And I had to go every summer if I wanted to go to the next grade. And
so
so
that's
that became the narrative for my education was while I had the time to just go ahead on, study, do the work, I wouldn't do it. I think I was somewhere trying to figure out how to handle all my internal struggles. So I couldn't focus on school and that.
that you've given an amazing base. Thank you so much for that. Now, after high school, or at some point, you joined the Navy. Why did
After high school. Yeah.
why did you join the Navy?
Yeah, yeah. So you're asking me all these great questions. And so as I continue to go through that process of the struggling, fighting back, giving up, and starting over, like every semester, I was never able to carry over what I had done that previous year to the next year. I just couldn't make those connections. And so when it was time to go on to the 12th grade and graduate, I remember them coming to the school to talk about the military because again the public schools had all those free services back then. And so I remember hearing about the military, but I didn't think much about it. I heard my dad tell stories about the fact that he had gone into the army but he didn't stay and make a career of it. And so my sister, my twin, this one that was in a sense, like my savior, so to speak, not savior as in Lord Savior,
Yes,
but
yes,
this person who kind of rescued me to become that partner. Every kid needs that friend. Some kids have a
exactly.
doll, some kids have a puppy, some kids have a teddy bear. I didn't want any of those things. So I had a human being, I had her. And so we got out of when I, was after high school was over, which I did drop out, but I did go on and get my GED. And she had said she was going in the Navy. And so I was like, oh, I'm going too. So she said, okay. So she had already gone down and looked into it. She says, they have this thing called a buddy system. What's that? Oh, two people go in together and they try their best, like a spouse, like two, spouse or couples or siblings. She said, so if we go in there, they would try to put us together. They don't guarantee that you'll be together, but they try their best. At least you do boot camp together. because the military understands taking a young person away from home and family, they're going to have challenges. So why not? So that's why I signed up, right? So she signed up and I went to sign up and I was excited. I thought my world was just going to be such a smooth road, after all that struggle.
How was it?
And right, but it wasn't.
Yes.
It wasn't because what happened was I went down, I took the test, I signed up, I got sworn in, and then she hit me with the bad news. After I had gotten sworn in to the United States Navy, a 23-year-old girl scared of my own shadow because of my struggles, she didn't go. She didn't go. And that was crushing. That was crushing
How
for
did
me.
how did you handle that part of your life?
Hmm. Oh, well, that was a lot. So I was, I was understanding that you've done something really, really big. It's kind of scary. You can't just back out. And it's not like high school. This is the United States military. You signed up. We
Yeah.
weren't all that far away from Vietnam War. I understood people that had gotten, they had, what they make when they make you go, when they had gotten drafted and things of that nature. So, I'm scared, like, okay, I better do this. So as you see the picture, so
Yes.
I went on through it. I went on through it and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have anyone to talk to or ask any questions. But I believe that all that struggling built this ability to overcome things. So I just kind of swooped everything that kind of happened to me later, all throughout my life, under that umbrella. I will be able to overcome it. All right. So I just treated it as another struggle. And I was able to look back and see that every struggle that had hit me, I had overcome that.
And it
So
has given you some growth.
that growth, yeah. So I go into the Navy. I'm in boot camp. Oh my goodness, the whole experience was incredible. So I'm in the military to become an aviation jet mechanic. And I'm like, okay, really? Out of all these, I wanted to be a secretary. And this is the job you give me. I was devastated a second time, but I went through with it. I said, I'll make the best of it because that became my attitude from growing up. Make the best of things, Lilisa. And because my mother was so creative and my whole life, I learned creativity skills. So I know that's not a word, but I just made that up. Creativity. I
That's
learned those
okay.
skills. My mother was always creating something, food, furniture, clothing. Oh my God. You name it, she created that. So I had built up that skill. So I said, okay, see what I'll go in here and create. So I just created a way for myself. I went in, I learned to be a good mechanic. They told me that I was mechanically inclined, that I, had this great hand dexterity. I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. And so they said, oh, it means you have good hand-eye coordination. So that's why they put me in that rank. And my score was like 3 points off from getting into the secretarial pool. I could have become, they called it personnel in the military. And I was just like 2 or 3 points away from that, but no one told me that I could retake the test.
So there again, there again.
There again,
But all
there
of
again.
this, Lisa, you have shared so many wonderful points that I remember my father saying, you need to know how to do more than one thing. Knowing how to do more than one thing, you never ever have to go hungry. You never have to go hungry because you can go, you can go vertically, you can go laterally, either way. And from what you have been telling us and sharing with us, I can see now some of this I didn't know. Now, as I said earlier, we met in 2017, but a lot of this I didn't know. I
Mhm.
met you as a staff development director at Hudson County Community College. So as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about all of the things that you were able to do as a result of
Wow.
being the director of staff development. So how
Include, go ahead. Including that banner, ordering that banner and picking out the pictures on it.
so how did some of what you have shared actually helped you as you think about it? What are some of those skills and strategies that you have applied as a staff development director?
Yes, I absolutely love that job. And I can't take any real credit, so to speak, for what I was able to do in getting that job and in managing that job and helping to grow that part of the organization. But from my mother. My mother, God bless her, she was the epitome of professional development, right? She worked for the Internal Revenue Service. She worked around a bunch of people that had the need for professional development, and she was a part of the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission at the job. She was that person at the job that could develop almost anybody. Well, look at she developed me, so and my siblings. Okay, so she definitely earned that. She earned that title, but they used her a lot, and I got a chance to watch that because she came home and she shared everything with us. She had, I had, it was five girls, me and my four sisters, and my grandmother moved in with us when I was age 5. So we had 7 girls in the house. So we had a ready-made professional development seminar every day. And so every day my mother would come home from work and she would talk about the things on the job that she was a part of, and she would share with us these different seminar activities that she would do. I remember one time she had something where she was telling the people how powerful they were. She had us cutting up foil the night before, sticking it on these pieces of paper, and when she went in, they would look at the paper and it said, look who is brilliant or beautiful, something like that. And then the person was to flip it up and see it was them. So I learned that
That is
growing up.
amazing.
I remember one time she came home and she said to us, she made a drawing and she said, all right, how do you see that glass? Is it half full or half empty? And we were like, huh, what? She would gather us around the kitchen table because, there was only one TV back then, so you didn't have to worry about that. And I remember her teaching us about being pessimistic or being optimistic. So my mother followed people like the Zig Ziglars of the world, Wayne Dyer. She read all their books. My mother was a reader. She had 1 billion books around in the house. I remember her having books by what's his name, Napoleon Hill, How to Think and Grow Rich. These are books that we tossed around at each other like frisbees. But I guess I got on a punishment or two here or there, and I had to read them. So and so I think that's where I really learned about development and personal. I learned mostly about personal development first. And then I guess I was somewhat learning about professional development as well because of my mother and her job and her going for promotions, hearing her on the phone talk to those individuals who reported to her, but also hearing her talk to her supervisors and the chief. I forget she would call him the chief or something. That's the titles they would have in the federal government. And
Well,
that's I think that's how I got it.
that's a great segue into this. So this Own Your Purpose coaching program.
Yeah, yeah.
Talk about it.
Yes, yes, yes. Again, so growing up and those experiences of, starting that club when I was in the 4th grade, the DV Lees, coming up with a song, coming up with a program, having a team of individuals. So being like a leader. Oh yeah. And by the way, I forgot the one point. When I went to boot camp, here we are, 80 women, you get stuck in a barracks together. Nobody knows anybody almost. And unless you go there with a buddy, but nobody in this group was a buddy. And so here we are, I'm in boot camp, and they gave us a series of questions on that very first week we were there. And one of the questions was, what does it take to be a leader? Or something like that. And me, I didn't know what else to say. So because of my life, I felt I had always followed somebody, especially my younger sibling. So I simply wrote in my paper, in order to be a leader, you must first be a follower. I didn't know what I was saying. I just said that. Little do I know, here comes a tap on the shoulder. We're going to pick 5 leaders out of this group of 80, and you all will become like, so when the sergeants aren't there, right? Because we're there all night by ourselves. They don't live there. They're just there during the day. And during the day, we're out doing things. But in the evenings at night, they had to have a leader there to monitor the facility. So anyway, that was some leadership stuff. So from all of that, I wanted to empower, and I then so going through college, succeeding in the military, doing those things. I just felt that I just felt I had something to give. And I started doing it. So way before Own Your Purpose, I just began to impart information to people. And then I learned later that that was coaching, or I was able to help people. And so it was a job that I was working down in Newark, where they would actually bring like my job there wasn't to do professional development, but there was a woman that had identified that in me. And so she would bring individuals that were struggling on the job to understand why they didn't get the job, or why they got looked over or left behind. And since I had already had a strategy, so to speak, of how to deal with that, mostly learned that again from my mother and growing up. So that I was called, somebody called me a coach, and they said, "You're a coach." And so I just started embracing it. So I had already been doing it, had been doing it for a long time, did it throughout the military, did it in almost every job I had, but not really knowing what it was and to really embrace it. But once I began to embrace it, things began to fall into place. And that's how Own Your Purpose came about. And I realized that, well, if that was me and I was struggling with finding my way, finding the right career, finding the right mate, finding the right place to live, then there's got to be other people just like me.
That's
And,
awesome. And you
and that's
did
when I
that.
started looking for those people.
Yes, amazing. That is awesome. So, um, military, just all of these aspects of your life, and now you have written a book.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, talk to us about your book.
So that is also a part of what happens when you begin to really understand who you really are. And as the book title, the subtitle represents, 8 strategies for becoming who you really are. So what I did was I thought about what it felt like to really start to embrace who you really are, not the things that people have said about you, or the things that you thought they said about you, or just the way they behave toward you, and then you internalize that as some other type of behavior, maybe based on a TV show you may have seen or something like that. And so I was like, okay, there are who am I really? I'm really this person that can take charge. Remember, Lilisa, you overcame all those things. So you really are a person that can change. You really are a person that can walk in a newness. You are a person that can rescript the whole situation, having gone from a high school dropout to a college graduate, having gone from, being homeless to being a person who is now a homeowner and many of those other types of activities. And so the book was my way of giving back to so many people that I would not be able to meet face to face. I was meeting people face to face, and it got to be a little daunting. It got to be tiring, them bringing many people to me. Like, I'm trying to get my job done, but
Yeah.
then people were saying to me, "Oh, here's this group. Can you go over there and speak to them? Here's this group. Can you go?" And then while I was working at the airline industry, I was supposed to go out into the community and recruit people, but I would get invited to these community workforce development programs because I would go there to recruit their unemployed people, and they would end up asking me to share my story
Yes.
about how I overcame, about how I went from leafless but not lifeless, so
Yes.
to speak. And it was a woman at one of these sessions that said to me, "Oh, she raised her hand and stopped, the conversation. Oh, where's your book? I want to get one." I said, "I don't
Amazing.
have a book." I hadn't even written a book at that point. And I think that was my catalyst to writing that first book. And that's pretty much how I got started. I thought about it, I made a plan. I didn't really know how to write a book. And one of my colleagues, a professor who is an English professor, I ran into him in the hallway and I said, "Oh, this person has suggested that I write a book. I don't know what to do." He was an author, a publisher, and all these things, and I knew that. And he said to me, "Okay, this is what you need to do. You do an outline just as if you're writing a paper, and you make the chapter headings, and then you fill it in, and go do that much and come back, and I'll help you with some more." And that's pretty much how I did it. I thought about a paper, I got the title, I thought about what would be the chapters and then what would go in the chapters. And then I sat down and I wrote chapter by chapter by chapter.
That's
So
amazing.
it's not like a novel, it's not like a
Yeah.
story where you have to come up with characters and things of that nature. The characters are natural.
So how can people get your book?
So they could get the book on my website at coachlilisa.com.
Okay, and we will share that again as
Thank you.
as we go on. Um, the other thing I want to ask you about, you also have a blog?
I do. I have a blog, and I have a blog, and that blog is on a radio show called Blog Talk Radio.
There
Blog Talk
she
Radio.
is.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And yep, and people can go there and they can listen to. We haven't done a recording lately, but we had because when I started working full time and I just didn't have the time to do all the recording. But we have I was going to take it down, but we have some amazing episodes. And so I said, let me leave it there because people is valuable information. We have some amazing guests sharing some, and now is a time period that a lot of people are looking to innovate. And what
Yes,
I learned about innovation, sometimes you can take something that already was, and
yes.
you can add to it or redo it, and boom, you got an instant innovation. So I leave it there for people who are like entrepreneurs, like myself, coaches, authors, speakers, and they may want to they want an idea, sort of like what AI is doing. So I guess I was AI before there was AI. They
Well,
can go on my blog and get ideas, but go ahead.
based on all the things you learned from your mom, yes, you are a trendsetter.
Yes.
Lisa, you are a busy lady. What do you do for self-care?
Yes, yes. Self-care is so, so, so important. So the first thing I do for self-care, I'm deeply a spiritual person. So I take the time to recognize that I can't do everything. I take the time to recognize that though I may look powerful, and yes, I do have power inside, and I even teach people how to release theirs. However, that power has to be restored. I
Mm-hmm.
did learn years ago, I think from a physicist, that power cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed or
Mm,
transferred. So I realized that there's all this power around us. How can I transform that and use it? And so that's how I kind of learned about, energy and how to get the rest and take vacations. So I started taking vacations back in 1989. It was until 1989 that I really took a vacation. And I did it every year. So every year I would go away for like a week just for some downtime and to relax and not to worry about. I was never that person who just worked, work, work, and didn't believe in taking vacations. And then I began to increase them as the job increased my time off. I
mm,
would take a 2 weeks and 3 weeks. But my self care now and it just involves me not worrying. That was always that was I had that self-care before I knew what self-care
mm,
was not to worry. I had been taught that by a very, very, very close family member, taught me that worrying did not satisfy anything that would help you really get anything done. You can do it. Now, sometimes you have to worry about certain things. Yes, a certain amount of worry
mhm.
can be helpful. Like if the economy is about to crash, you might want to worry that you don't spend all your money right now. You got to save some. So some worry, but not to worry about things that are totally out of your control. And
Exactly.
don't worry about things that if you can change it, spend the energy to change it. And it's just instead of waiting. And so it also includes I had a jacuzzi uh, made for my backyard. And so I just go and sit in there and just and it's because what happened, or I noticed it when I went on vacation and I would look around and I would watch people, how much fun they were having at this beautiful scenery and the pools and the jacuzzis. And I was like, well, wait, why can't I have that in my house?
Yes,
Why
yes.
do I have to fly thousands and thousands of miles? It's one thing to fly to see some ancient structure or to go see some world fabulous thing, but a pool, a jacuzzi, and beauty, like your background, I said, I want to get that in my house. And then that's what I began to put in place. Me and my
So,
late husband, we designed our home to
uh,
be that place where it's like going to a resort.
that's awesome. So I see here you have a golf club in your
Yeah,
hand.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I play golf,
Mhm.
tennis. I started, and that's the other thing I started doing also in 1987 that I had never really done that before, other than school and gym classes. I never really did much with sports, but it was in 1987 I started playing tennis.
Mhm.
And I learned tennis first, and then my late husband taught me tennis, and we played almost every single day.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, then when he started playing golf, then I went to play golf with him a few times and I wasn't playing. I just went and I observed these couples out there and they were older. Like they, at that time, I was maybe 35, 40, and these couples would be like in their 60s and 70s together. So I would chat with them. And one of them told me that this woman told me the reason she learned how to play golf was that a lot of her husband's friends had passed on, but yet he still had this ability to play and this love to play. And she wanted to be his partner without him having to search for someone. When you get to the golf course, sometimes you have to find, find a partner. And I said, I'll do that too. And I told my husband that I told him I wanted to do that. And he said, okay, you sure? He's like, this is an expensive hobby. Okay. You sure you're going to do it? I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And what happened the first time I swung that club at a place like what you see right there, what we call the driving range, I
Yeah.
fell in love with it.
Oh, awesome. Well, Elisa, it is so wonderful to speak with you. And you are, where are you in this picture?
Now, here, so that's me right there playing golf to the left. And then on the other picture, I'm there with one of the actresses from the TV show. If you remember, The Living
Yes.
Single. And
Yes.
that's Kim Cole.
Yes.
Yes, I got a chance to meet her and introduce her at a women's conference, the BCon. Now, let me tell you, that's the other thing that brings me great peace, great joy, and self care is when I'm able to pour into other women that really want empowerment. And I worked in a halfway house, and a lot of times the individuals who came to my session did not want to be there.
Yes.
But but I get a lot of energy when I'm with people who sign up on purpose to come and be poured into, but they also come to pour out. And then it becomes this great exchange, almost like that power thing, that energy thing. It's not really being created or distributed, it's just being exchanged. And
Yes.
that is self-care for me.
That's awesome. All right. So I want to put here your information,
Okay.
Lilisa, so
Yes.
that, okay, tell me again. It's,
So it is, so it's the website, you can either hit it by www, that's fine, dot coach, COACH, LILISA, Coach Lilisa, LILISA.com. I tried to make it so simple. They
yes,
can do
that's
that,
it.
or
That's
they can,
wonderful.
yeah, they can go right there, or they can send me a text, or I do give out my number. It's in my book anyway,
Okay.
908. They can reach me 908-432-1853. So if somebody wants to get in touch with me, they can contact that number.
That is
And
awesome.
yeah, I learned that from a singer. She was this very accomplished singer, and she booked all her own stuff. And she
Oh, that's
says,
good.
"Yeah, I thought, well, why not? If she can do it, so can I."
Very good. Lisa, I am so glad that I had the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you for taking some time out of your very busy schedule. I'm excited for all the things that are taking place in your life. And remember, you have not retired, you are just refiring.
Oh, I love
And I
that.
did not coin that phrase myself. I got it from someone else,
Well,
but
you,
it's very apropos. So thank you so much for your time. And
well, one thing I
yes,
have to
yes,
let you know,
yes.
a lady by the name of Kelly gave me the nickname of the fire starter
Oh,
years
wow.
ago,
Awesome.
back when I had a radio show on 1070 AM, Harvest Radio.
Awesome. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you, listeners and viewers, for
Yes.
joining me for this episode of Leafless, Not Lifeless. I'm Sharon Benjamin, your host. And perhaps you have a story you'd like to share as well about a situation when you appeared to be leafless, but unbeknownst to those who were observing, you were actually growing and developing. I'd love to share your story. Contact me at leaflessnotlifeless@gmail.com. That's leaflessnotlifeless@gmail.com. Again, thanks for watching and listening, and I will see you the next time. Thanks, Lilisa.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's going to be a great year, I believe.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Great, great.